So we are reading Zero Limits by Joe Vitale and Dr. Hugh Lin. We are on chapter 6, page 56 of the book and
56 of the PDF.
Wonderful.
When I attended the first Ho'oponopono workshop run by Dr. Hugh Lin, he praised my book, The Attractor Factor. He told me that as I clean myself, my book's vibration will raise and everyone will feel it when they read it. In short, as I improved, my readers would improve.
So what does this imply? Anything that you do has a resonant frequency with you. And as you raise your level of consciousness, anything connected with you also starts to rise in the level of consciousness. So if anyone is coming in contact with something that you have created, it will start to influence them also in that particular manner. Okay, so this is the reason why we used to go to saints. We used to sit in their presence. This is the basic reason why we would like to do that.
What about the books that are already sold and out there? I asked. My book had been a bestseller and gone through numerous editions and was coming out in paperback. I worried about all the people who already had copies of my book.
Niket, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, Niket, the question is that out here it is his book, what it is. But suppose if suppose we go to meet someone and we are meeting them. So before meeting, can we say these things just to so that the whole thing goes well?
Yeah, absolutely. You can put a reball on yourself. You can go into
Reball
F10.
to karte hain, haan. Yeah, that we
It's
do.
the same process, right? It's the same
Yeah.
thing. You're putting yourself in sync. Now, this is just another tool that you're getting. You get it.
Okay.
Now, you can clear yourself. What is he saying? Clear yourself before doing anything. That is the game that he's asking us to play. Nothing more than that. When you use the reball, you also clear yourself. When you go into F10 or F12, you clear yourself. So the clearing is taking place in all these processes. If you do heart focus breathing, you're clearing yourself. Why is it? You're focusing your attention in the heart center. As soon as that happens, you're getting out of your mind where the ego resides, right? You're shifting space. So all these processes, all the tools that we are learning are creating that harmony in any case. You get what I mean? So if you're sending a letter to someone, put a reball on the letter, put a reball on yourself, put a reball on that person. You'll find when that person opens that email or that letter, there will be a totally different reaction with that person. Now, what he is saying, before sending the email, you clear yourself, you clear the email and then send it. So it's the same process, right?
Same thing. Yeah.
It's just now what is happening? We have various processes to do the same thing. So it's like that Sehwag story that I keep telling, that Sehwag had only one shot which he used to play in the offside, and all the bowlers got to know. Now, whenever he used to play that shot, he used to get caught in the slips, right? Now, he didn't have another shot to play over there. So every time it used to happen. Then he actually practiced 50 other ways to, I'm just putting a figure over there, to hit that shot. Right. So now if one thing works, that will be okay. If something else works, you use that. So you need to figure out which of the tools you resonate with and start using it. That's all.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Those books aren't out there, he explained, once again blowing my mind with his mystic wisdom. They are still in you. In short, there is no out there. It would take a whole book to explain this advanced technique with the depth it deserves, which is why I'm writing this one with Dr. Hugh Lin's consent. Suffice it to say that whenever you want to improve anything in your life, from finances to relationships, there's only one place to look: inside yourself.
So what is he saying over here? That in actual fact, there is nothing out there. because everything is one, everything is whole. We are all interrelated and interconnected. That's saying that if a butterfly flutters its wings in Brazil, it affects the entire universe. So whatever you are doing, it is affecting the whole universe. So the moment we start connecting to that deeper state in our own state of consciousness, then that separation stops. Okay. For example, what Raghuji was saying in the beginning of the thing, that in these expanded states, there is no other. It is all one. So when we start transcending duality, there is nothing which is outside. Everything is within. So what he's saying over here, even if you've sent out those books, you are still connected with those books, and those books are part of you because you have created those books, right? So whatever is happening, if you raise your state of consciousness, it will raise the state of consciousness of the other person also. Just 1 second. Now I'll share a small incident which happened with me. I don't know if I've shared it here before. But again, all of you know that I still do energy field rectification and clearing. So we had gone to this one lady's house. So what we started doing was we started checking all the almiras, if the almiras are okay or not. So when I came in front of one almira, I found that my antenna is going the opposite way. So there was something depleting in that almira. So we opened the almira and many shirts and all that were hanging there, and it was emitting from that one shirt. So I took out that shirt. I said, and then I asked that young girl whose almira it was, the mother was standing there, who gave you this shirt? He said, my friend, my good friend gave me the shirt. So I said, after she gave you this shirt, or just before she gave you the shirt, what was the state of your relationship? And she said that after she gave me the shirt, we broke up. Okay. And then she started questioning, but there are many other shirts which are there in this almira given by her. Now, when she gave, see, this is also very important. It is clear. But what is the consciousness with which we are doing something is also in that thing. So we need to start becoming aware as to whenever we are doing anything, we are influencing the whole, right? But having said that, if that friend of hers started clearing herself of all the depleting thoughts, or that young girl whose almira the shirt was started clearing herself of the depleting thoughts that she had about her friend, that shirt would have automatically got cleared. Okay. So the point here is that we have to be very clear of what we are doing. We don't need to bother about what the other guy is doing. So I need to constantly clear myself. Now, if Joe Vitale has written any book, he is connected with that book and you become responsible. So now this is the reason why many of these really elevated gurus, they didn't want to take any disciples, because as soon as you took a disciple, the term guru means that you are totally responsible for that person. Now, whatever that person does, you are responsible for. So whether you want to become a guru or not is also a very big question mark, because the guru has to take responsibility for the student. Okay. So this is, again, it comes back to Ho'oponopono. So they were also operating in that. They had to constantly monitor what was happening with their disciples. When we read Autobiography of a Yogi, Yukteswarji actually got to know that these students are coming. Or if any student was having a problem, there are so many stories in Autobiography of a Yogi that Yukteswarji used to get to know, and he used to send help, or he used to ask the person to come over or whatever, right? So the guru was in constant touch. He was constantly clearing all his students. He may not have been using these 4 statements, but always, all the time, the guru has to clean the students and he has to take responsibility for the students.
Not everyone at the event grasped what Dr. Hewlin was talking about. Near the end of the final day, they started bombarding him with questions, all from the logical side of the mind, such as, how can my cleaning affect another person? Where is free will in all of this? Why are so many terrorists attacking us? Dr. Hewlin was quiet. He seemed to look right at me, and I sat in the back of the room. He looked frustrated, considering that his entire message was about there being no out there, and that's it, it's all inside you. He probably felt that everyone's lack of understanding reflected his own lack of understanding. He looked like he was going to sigh. I can only imagine that he was saying within himself, I'm sorry, I love you.
So, so what is he saying over here? When the students didn't understand, Dr. Hugh started looking within himself that he didn't understand, right? So again, what was he doing? He was taking responsibility for the students, right? Now, all these questions which were coming from the left side of the brain. And these people were not understanding that where the total consciousness is there, the left dissolves. It becomes whole. You go into a whole brain state of awareness, a whole brain state of consciousness, which is what you find that when you're doing the Hennessing process, the Monroe processes, you go into a whole brain state. Now, logic is not there. You stop operating out of memory and you allow the inspiration in. When you are operating with the left side of the brain, what is happening is that the logical side is still active. So the logic will always work only from memory, right? Now, if I'm going into an expanded state, the terrorists are not there only, because in my mind, there is no terrorist, right? So why are they asking for terrorists? Because they have a memory of the terrorist. Okay. So the more we clear ourselves, the less we will connect with anything that is depleting us. We will constantly start looking at things that is uplifting us.
I noticed that many people at the event had Hawaiian names, yet didn't look Hawaiian. Mark and I asked them about it. We were told that if you felt the urge, Dr. Hewlin could give you a new name. The idea was to identify with the new self on the way to having no self and merging with divinity at zero.
So this used to happen in our Gurukul culture also, where, because see, what do you identify with the most? Now, I keep using this example even in the excursion. If there are a group of people who are talking in one room and you are sitting outside that room, really not paying attention to that conversation, you will hear a blah, but you are not going to pay attention to that conversation because maybe you're reading a book or you're doing something else, right? Now, as soon as they mention your name, boom, your attention is going to go there. Why? The reason for that is that as we are growing up, from when we are a toddler, we are constantly encoded that you are this, you are this, you are Mr. X, you are Mr. X, you are Mr. X. Now that gets ingrained into our system. And whenever Mr. X is called, you respond. Why? Because it's become an automatic kind of a procedure. So now, if I drop the name itself, which I associate myself with, then automatically we put ourselves into a position to really get out of that self, which is the old way of how we were behaving or how every situation was occurring to us. So we allow for a shift to take place within ourselves. Now, by the Lord's grace, we've got so much of technology to help us to achieve these things. In my view, again, this is my view, you really don't need to change your name. You need to change how you associate with that name. If you raise your level of consciousness, again, if you look at the hierarchy of consciousness in the David Hawkins method, you will find that as soon as you start operating at 500 and above, the ego automatically will start to tone down. Okay. And you will get out of that ego business. Yourself is identified with the ego. The moment you go into those states, the ego automatically starts to get off, because you will start looking out for the other person. You will start becoming compassionate. You will start experiencing that why should I be in the, why do I need to be on the left side of the grid? I need to get on the right side of the grid. So the smaller conflicts, automatically it will start occurring to you that there's no point in pursuing something. Whereas the ego will always want you to pursue something. These small hurts. Ye aise mere se baat kar liya. He should not have taken this. He should have done this. Why he didn't do that? All these things will start to ultimately drop away. right? And we will shift our consciousness. So this is what he's saying over here, that if we drop the name, then we can, it is easier to self-identify with the new personality that we are creating.
I knew the power of a new name. Back in 1979, I became Swami Anand Manjushri. It was a name given to me by my teacher at the time, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. At that time in my life, when I was still struggling with my past, contending with poverty and searching for meaning, at that time in my life, when I was still struggling with my past, contending with poverty and searching for meaning, the name helped me start fresh. I used the name for 7 years. It was natural to wonder if Dr. Hewlin would or could give me a new name. When I asked him about it, he said he checks in with divinity. When he feels inspired, he says what he gets. A month or so after that first seminar, he wrote me, Joe, I saw a cloud come up in my mind the other day. It began a transformation of itself, churning slowly into soft, soft yellow. It then stretched itself out like a child upon waking into invisibility. From the invisibility, the name Au Aqua, godly, surfaced. I received this quotation as part of an email message today. O Lord, that lends me life, lend me a heart replete with thankfulness. I wish you peace beyond all understanding, peace of I, Ahalya Kala.
So, so so the process of giving a name, it was just not what the ego self of the guru gave you a name, right? The guru actually went into an altered state of consciousness, and whatever downloaded, that is what the guru used to give. Now over here, when you see over here, oh Lord, that lends me life, lend me a heart that replete with thankfulness. So now if I'm in thankfulness, I am constantly in gratitude. If I'm constantly in gratitude, I'm constantly on the right side of the grid. So what I'm finding more and more, the more in appreciation and in gratitude you become, the easier it is for you to be in the right side of the grid. So if I can look in my life or in any situation, what can I find to be grateful for in that situation? What can I find to be happy about in that situation? What can I be thankful in that situation? What can I find to appreciate in that situation? Automatically what happens is that my level of consciousness will start to shift.
I love the name Au Aqua, but I had no idea how to pronounce it. So I wrote and asked for help. Here's what he wrote back. Joe, A is for the sound for the letter in A in father. O is the sound for the letter in O. K is the sound as in kitchen. U is the sound as in blue. Peace of I, Ahalya Kala. I was able to figure it out and enjoyed my new name. I never used it in public, but I did when writing to Dr. Hewlin. Later, when I began my blog online at www.joevitali.com, I would sign off using Au Aqua. Very few people questioned it. I loved it, though, because it felt like I was asking divinity to clean my blog by using a phrase that meant to me the parting of the clouds to see God.
So, what is the meaning that we associate with anything becomes extremely important. Whatever may be happening, one person may see it as depleting and another person may see it as very, very energizing. So it all depends on your perspective. And when we start shifting into higher states, our perspective about whatever we are perceiving starts to shift. And that's the beauty of going and tagging into these states of consciousness.
While the weekend training installed I love you in my head, at least temporarily, I wanted more. I wrote and asked Dr. Hewlin if he would come to Texas and talk about Ho'oponopono to a small group of friends. This was my plan, to have more of him to myself. He would fly to Texas for a small talk and stay with me. While he was with me, I'd pick his brains about what he knows, including how he healed that entire ward of mentally ill criminals. Dr. Hewlin agreed and wrote the following to me. Joe, thank you for taking the time to call me. You didn't have to, and you did. I am grateful. I would like to propose to you an interview format for the informal visit in Austin in February. Perhaps the background for the interview could be a kind of survey of problem solving approaches that you covered in your book, Adventures Within Confessions of an Inner World Journalist. I see you being more than the interviewer and me more than the interviewee in this arrangement. Clarity is so important in conveying information, be it in whatever art form it takes. For example, there is much fuzziness as to what a problem is, much less its cause. How does one solve a problem when one might be unclear about it? Where is the problem to be found to be processed? In the mind? What's that? Or in the body, where most people put their bets? Or both? Perhaps it's not in any of these venues.
So, see, I actually, at the end of the day, the game is all about being clear. So now in the excursion also, we do a lot of question and answers to get intuitive messages, to get intuitive solutions to our issues that we are facing. It's called use the one bread technique. Many of you have already experienced it. And you can get some really profound insights, profound answers in those states. But if you don't ask the right question, you will never get the right answer. So when you are looking at cleaning yourself, it's all about getting into a more clear state of consciousness, into a more clear state of mind. Okay. So this is what he's saying. Where does it come from? How does it come? These are very, very pertinent questions to whatever is happening with us.
There's even the question of who or what does the problem solving. As you mentioned in your book, it is difficult to keep judgment at bay, even as one attempts to problem solve using such methods as the option or forum. Are judgments or beliefs the real problem? Let the real problem stand up for all to see. The formal interview would not be about good or bad, right or wrong methods or concepts. It would be a way of teasing out recurrent unclarity. You and I would provide a tremendous service if we cleared the waters only one iota.
So what is he saying over here? Very clearly, it would be a way of teasing out recurrent unclarity. So now recurrent, right? So we constantly keep talking about patterns, something that is constantly repeating in your system. So we need to clear out these recurrent patterns from our system, because they are the ones who really cause the, cause you to be stuck in the state that you are stuck. Because until we transcend what is constantly repeating in our system, we will not go forward. It's like an anchor which is holding us back, or a rope that we are tied to, and it's tying us to the Kuluka bale. Like if you visualize that scene, that a cow is walking constantly, but he's hooked onto a central peg, and the guy is walking and walking and walking, but he's not going anywhere. So whenever we are not clear, there is unclarity in our system, and these patterns are repeating. We are like that Koluka bell. We are stuck and we are going round and round doing really nothing. And we think that we are doing everything. So the idea here is very clear. Clear out these uncertainties, these unclear thoughts, unclear processes that are constantly running. So it's also like a virus, right? If a virus gets into your computer, it's going to constantly replicate and then it will hog up the entire hard disk. So we need to get that virus cleared out as soon as possible. So anything that's a recurring thought, it's a virus. We need to get it cleared out.
Of course, each moment carries its own peculiar rhythms and tides. In the end, as Brutus says, paraphrasing in Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, we will have to wait till the end of the day to see how it all turns out. And so will we. Tell me your thoughts about the proposed interview arrangement. I am not married to it as Brutus to the end. Peace, Ihale Kala.
So again, he is very clear that this is a suggestion and I'm willing to shift if it is required, right? And also, when you look at it, whenever we are stuck in a position, I always say this, right? The first thing is to become aware of that pattern. The next thing is to accept that, yes, the pattern is there. The third is to brainstorm as to what we can do about it. The fourth is implement the solution. And the fifth is observe whether the solution is working or not. So this is what he's saying over here. We will have to wait till the end of the day to see how it all turns out. Now they killed Caesar. Now they didn't know how the population is going to react. So they've done what they did, but they don't know the consequences of what they did. So like that, we need to be constantly observing whether the tool that we've applied or the perspective shift that we've created in our life is creating value in our system or not. Is it raising our level of consciousness or it is actually depleting it? So we need to constantly be aware. We need to constantly be focused on what we are thinking, right? How are we thinking? All these things will automatically make a difference.
I quickly announced a private dinner with Dr. Hewlin and myself. I thought 5 or 6 people might show up. Instead, almost 100 people showed interest, and 75 people paid for a nice dinner to reserve their spot at the table. Dr. Hewlin surprised me by asking for a list of everyone who would attend the event. He wanted to clean on them. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I sent him the list. He wrote back saying, "Thank you for the list, Au Aqua. It's only about cleansing, the chance to get clear of stuff and to be clear with God. Then, soul, live thou upon thy servant's loss, and let that pine to aggravate thy store. By terms divine in selling hours of dross, within be fed, without be rich no more. So shalt thou feed on death, that feeds on men, and death once dead, there's no more dying then. Peace be with you, Ihalya Kala."
So the way I would look at this is that he's saying these repetitive thoughts, these things which we are all carrying with us, is actually slowly leading us to our death. The moment we start clearing, then we become one and there is no death because we know everything is a continuum.
When Dr. Hewlin arrived in Austin, I picked him up. He immediately started asking me questions about my life. The book you wrote about your life, referring to adventures within, shows you did a wide variety of things to find peace. He began, "Which one really works?" I thought about it and said they all had value, but maybe the option process was the most useful and reliable. I explained it's a way to question beliefs to find out what is real. When you question beliefs, what are you left with? What are you left with? I repeated. You're left with a clarity about choice. Where's that clarity coming from? He asked. I wasn't sure what he was getting at. Why can a person be wealthy and still be an ass? He suddenly asked me. I was taken by surprise with the question. I wanted to explain that wealth and ass aren't exclusive. There's nothing written that says only angels are wealthy. Maybe the obnoxious person is clear about money, so he can be wealthy and still be a boss. But I couldn't find the words in the moment. I have no idea, I confessed. I don't think you have to change your personality to be wealthy. You just have to have beliefs that accept wealth. Where do those beliefs come from? He asked. Having been in his training, I knew enough to answer. They are programs people pick up from living.
Okay. So what is he saying over here? That this is an example that we keep using when I draw the straight line, right? So we used to say that when I draw the straight line, all the energy required or all the actions taken for the line to come into existence is in the line. But the question always has become, after doing the biogeometry thing, is where did the thought to draw the line come from? So if we see, this is our conscious mind and this is our subconscious mind or a deeper state of ourselves. So the message always comes from below the line, right? We think that we have thought, but where did that thought come from? It always comes from from a deeper state of yourself. Now you can call it outside or inside, because we are so used to perceiving divinity outside us, but it actually comes from a much more deeper state of ourselves. Now, this is what we have the OBE program coming up. This is exactly what William Bullman also takes you to at the end of the program, that everything is within. Even an out-of-body experience, which we consider that we are going out of body, is actually an in-body experience where we are actually experiencing ourselves at a much more profound and a much, much more deeper state of consciousness. So everything that you do actually comes from below the line.
He again changed the subject by saying, I am truly a hypnotic writer. He was beginning to entertain the idea of a book by me about Ho'oponopono. Are you ready for me to write the book now? I asked. Let's see how the weekend goes, he said. Speaking of that, how are we doing this dinner? I asked. I've always wanted to control the situation to be sure I do well and people get what they want. I never plan, he said. I trust divinity.
So if you saw what Reverend Bill also said, that I never plan what I'm going to talk about. I just talk, and whatever comes in, I say it, right? So this is exactly what he's saying, that I never plan. He's gone into that state. Now for mere mortals like us, we are not in that state of consciousness. So yes, we need to plan. We need to bring the planning into muscle memory. Then it happens automatically. So when he's operating at a higher state of consciousness, he doesn't need to plan. Things happen, and they happen the way they are meant to happen. So he says, I trust divinity.
But are you going to speak first, or me, or what? And do you have an introduction you want me to read for you? We'll see, he said. Don't plan. This made me uncomfortable. I like to know what's expected of me. Dr. Hewlin was pushing me into the darkness, or maybe to the light. I wasn't sure at that time. He went on to say something more wise than I knew at the time. What we humans are unaware of in our moment-to-moment existence is a constant, incessant resistance to life, he began. This resistance keeps us in a constant, incessant state of displacement from our self-identity and from freedom, inspiration, and above all else, the divine creator itself. Simply put, we are displaced people wandering aimlessly in the desert of our minds. We are unable to heed the precept of Jesus Christ: resist not. We are not aware of another precept: peace begins with me.
So, what is he saying over here? We constantly come in our own way. How many times are we saying no, can't, should, would? All these words which puts us in the left side of the grid. So he is saying drop the resistance, let things happen rather than attempting to make them happen with your small consciousness, which, as he explained previously, we are processing only 40 bits of data or 15 bits of data with this guy. And actually this guy is processing 40 million bits of data. So what are we talking about when we think that we can actually do things with this guy? So we need to allow, we need to let go, we need to step out of our own way. We need to stop resisting. We are constantly in resistance. And that is where the problem actually lies. We need to get out of our own way and let life happen rather than make life happen.
Resistance keeps us in a constant state of anxiety and spiritual, mental, physical, financial, and material impoverishment, he added. Unlike Shakespeare, we are unaware that we are in a constant state of resistance instead of flow. For each bit of consciousness, we experience at least 1 million bits unconsciously, and the one bit is useless for our salvation.
So when you look at yourself, where is all the resistance coming from? When we are not in appreciation, when we are not in gratitude, when we are resisting what we have, the abundance that we have around us, we are unwilling to acknowledge it. And that is what creates the problems for us. The moment we start acknowledging, we start actually perceiving the abundance that we have, that is what we are going to start attracting into our life. But most of us, what do we focus on? We are constantly focusing on lack, what I don't have. And that is what you keep attracting to your life, then you will not have. So the shift in the state of consciousness becomes extremely important, where we let go and we are constantly talking in awareness that jack into the flow, get into the flow, allow rather than, make things happen. Go from effortfulness to effortlessness. Everything needs to happen. Why do you need to make it happen? So get out of your own way and allow things to happen.
Niket, I have a question.
Yes.
Doesn't resistance also become a muscle memory after a point?
101%. So whatever you are constantly repeating, that is what is going to become your knee-jerk reaction. You're constantly going to go into that. Now, if you really start observing yourself, you will find many people, before you say something, they'll say, I can't do it. Okay, so now what is happening? As soon as you've said, I can't do it, you've created a wall in front of you. Now, because you've created the wall yourself, now if you can do it also, you can't say that I can't do it because you've already said I can't do it. So what are you saying? Instead, you say, yes, okay, I'll do it. Let's see what happens. And then you ask for help. You ask for support that, okay, this is where I'm having a problem. Please come and support me. So then what happens? Everything starts to roll. Things start to happen. There's this movie, we've spoken about it a lot, The Yes Man, where the guy starts saying yes. How many times do we say yes and how many times do we say no? Let's look at our own consciousness and see where we are operating from. This is what he's talking about here. That are we allowing or are we resisting? When I say can't, won't, all these nonsensical words in my view, we are creating a problem in our own lives and we think it's coming from outside. It is not coming from within us, but we are the creators of our reality. So unless we are aware of what we are doing, how do we blame anyone else? Because ultimately we are only to blame. So we need to shift our state of consciousness. We need to shift the way that we are thinking and be observant about it. instead of allowing the thinking process or that ego mind to become our master, we need to become the master of that ego mind. So it doesn't play up. The ego is always about survival of itself, right? But where is that bliss? It's in that oneness. When we start experiencing that bliss, there's a state of oneness. It's a wholeness, right? It's an elevated state of consciousness. The ego will constantly try to pull you down. So we have to be constantly aware as to where the ego is taking us.
This was going to be one fascinating evening. He asked to see the room where he would be holding the dinner. It was a huge ballroom on the top floor of a downtown Austin, Texas hotel. The manager was polite and let us into the room. Dr. Hewlin asked if we could be alone in it. She agreed and left. What do you notice? He asked me. I looked around and said, the carpet needs to be cleaned. What impressions do you get? He asked. There's no right or wrong. What you get may not be what I get. I allowed myself to relax and focus on the moment. Suddenly, I sensed a lot of traffic, a weariness, a darkness. I wasn't sure what it was or what it meant, but I voiced it to Dr. Hewlin. The room is tired, he said. People come in and out and never love it. It needs acknowledgement. I thought that was a little strange. A room is like a person. It has feelings. Well, whatever. This room says its name is Sheila. Sheila, that's the room's name? Sheila wants to know we appreciate her. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. We need to ask permission to have our event here, he said. So I'm asking Sheila if it is okay with her. What is she saying? I asked, feeling a little foolish asking the question. She says it is okay. Well, that's good, I replied, remembering that my deposit on the room was non-refundable.
So again, we've discussed this before. Everything has consciousness. And let me tell you, every space has conscious awareness. And believe me when I tell you this, that if I am going into any space, I will always stand before the door and ask for permission from the space to enter. And you get a lot of messages about what's happening in the space, what is going off, what is not going off, just by asking that question and becoming
That
one.
I always remember.
One with the space. Yeah. Okay. So the fact over here is that what did he get? He went into an altered state and he found that the room was tired. Now, this is one of the reasons that, let me tell you, I used to travel 25 days a month, but I never used to stay in hotels, because you really don't know what is happening in a hotel room, right? And most hotel rooms and these conference areas, they are actually tired because people just come in, go out, they don't care. Let's say something falls on the floor in a hotel room. You're not bothered by it. But if it's the same thing falls in your house, you're going to be very bothered by it. So you're treating the conference room totally impersonally. And most of the people who go there treat it impersonally. How many people really ask for permission before using a space? Okay, so this is what he's doing. He is getting the room into his side so that it can result in an experience which is to the benefit of everyone who's in that particular conference. That's the attitude with which he is coming in. So when you're seeing in the healing group also, whenever we are asking for any reball for any program, we will ask for a reball for the space, for the equipment being used, for the rest of the family, for the participant, for the trainer. So we are encompassing everyone in that reball, right? And then it asks, or it creates a scenario where people have a good experience in the program. And it's not only the people, it's also the inanimate objects, because we want them to experience it well also. Because if they experience it well, they are going to work well. So What's the problem in actually acknowledging the help of everything that we are getting, all the help that we are getting from all the systems which are in play?
He went on to explain, I was in an auditorium once getting ready to do a lecture, and I was talking to the chairs. I asked, is there anybody I've missed? Does anyone have a problem that I need to take care of? One of the chairs said, know, there was a guy sitting on me today during a previous seminar who had financial problems, and now I just feel dead. So I cleaned with that problem and I could just see the chair straightening up. Then I heard, okay, I'm ready to handle the next guy.
So inanimate objects, let me tell you, they can really have a conversation with you. Okay. This is something that you need to experience to understand. It's very difficult to explain, but you get that sense of knowing. You feel that communication happening. And believe me, it's a very, very powerful state in the sense that a lot of rectification can take place. If you hug a tree and you connect with the conscious awareness of the tree can tell you so much that we normally do not experience, because that tree has been in that place for a long time, right? So we need to open ourselves up to these communications. We need to acknowledge whatever is there around us.
He's talking to chairs now? Somehow I left my mind open to hear more about this unusual process of his. He went on to explain, what I actually try to do is teach the room. I say to the room and everything in it, do you want to learn how to do Ho'oponopono? After all, I'm going to leave soon. Wouldn't it be nice if you could do this work for yourselves? Some say yes, some say no, and some say, I'm too tired. I remember that many ancient cultures regarded everything as alive. In the book Clearing, Jim Pathfinder Ewing explains that places often have stuck energies. It shouldn't be too crazy to imagine rooms and chairs having feelings. It was certainly a mind expanding thought. If physics is right, that there is nothing but energy making up what we perceive to be solid, then talking to rooms and chairs just might be a way to rearrange that energy in some new, cleaner form. With chairs and rooms talking back, I wasn't quite ready for that at that time.
So this actually happens. Okay. Energies get stuck in places, and I've experienced this physically, where it's like, you can't see it with your naked physical eye, but it's like keychain, like slime, which is there on the floors of various places. And immediately you know that there's a lot of conflict going on. There's a lot of bad blood happening in that family or in that place. If you find it in an office of a company, then you are sure that things are getting stuck. They're not moving. Everyone is not on the same page. They don't look after each other. They're constantly blaming each other. The company may be going into losses. So when energy is stuck, you need to put processes in place which will release that energy, which will clear the space, so that clarity starts to come to the space also. There are various tools to do it. This also is one of the ways of doing it. As I explained, that one of the participants of people who were attending processes said that as soon as she used to start going to the office after attending these processes for a few months, conflict used to stop in their environment, in that office space. How was that happening? She raised her level of consciousness, and it started to affect the level of the consciousness of the space. Now, when I'm in a higher state of consciousness, conflict automatically will go out of the window, because conflict is here and I'm operating over here. There is no question that this is going to come into my awareness because I have transcended it. So the more we raise our level of consciousness, the more we raise the level of consciousness of the space that we are in, the things that we are using. If I start appreciating, if I start operating with gratitude, I automatically start raising the consciousness level of everything that I'm using. And that's where the beauty starts to come. Okay, we don't know this, but there is a positioning of everything where a connection with the center takes place. This is what Zia was talking about yesterday in the worldling talk that she gave, that the worlders, they are focused within, they create a center within themselves. And let me tell you again from experience, I'm saying that there is a center in everything around us. There is a process called rotation. You can go around a space and just rotate all the objects which are in the space, and there will be a state, in that rotation where the connection with the center of that item starts to happen. And you'll find that it can shift the energy of the entire place like that. It's so profound, it's not funny. But when we treat things that are around us as inanimate, not having feelings, then we don't realize this. So the question becomes, will we be comfortable in the way that we are keeping or handling a particular inanimate objects? If we are not happy about it, then how do you think that the inanimate object will be happy about it? So their comfort also matters because they are also radiating a field. It's a fantastic process. Let's see, we may do some tests one day in one of the sessions.
Dr. Hewlin looked out the window at the downtown skyline. The huge buildings, the state capitol, the horizon looked beautiful to me, but not to Dr. Hewlin. I see headstones, he said. The city is full of the dead. I looked out the window. I didn't see graves or death. I saw a city. Again, I was learning that Dr. Hewlin used both sides of his brain in each moment, so he could see structures as metaphors and speak them as he saw them. Not me, though. I was just asleep in my shoes with my eyes open.
So what is he saying over here? Dr. Hugh is operating from a whole brain state. So from the right side of the brain, you get a gestalt. You get an intuitive field as to what's happening in any space. When you use the logical mind, you are operating out of memory. So if it's something that you've not experienced, you will not get that intuition. You will not get that inspiration. But since Dr. Hugh was operating in a whole brain state, he was actually getting that download and that intuition and being able to speak about it also.
Should we stop?
No, it's just going to finish. Let's finish.
We stayed in the hotel room for maybe 30 minutes. As far as I could tell, Dr. Hewlin walked around cleaning the room, asking for forgiveness, loving Sheila, and cleaning. At one point, he made a phone call. He told the person on the other end where he was, described it, and invited her impressions. He seemed to get confirmation about his own impressions. After he hung up, we sat at a table and talked. My friend says this room will let us do our dinner here as long as we love it, he told me. How do we love it? Just say I love you to it, he answered. It seemed silly. Say I love you to a room? But I did my best. I had previously learned that you don't have to actually feel I love you for it to work. You just had to say it. So say it, I did. After you say it a few times, you begin to actually feel it. After a few minutes of silence, Dr. Hewlin spoke more words of wisdom. What we individually hold, memories or inspirations, have an immediate and absolute impact on everything from humanity to the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms. He said, when a memory is converted to zero by divinity in one subconscious mind, it is converted to zero in all subconscious minds in all of them.
So what is he saying over here? That I need to say, I love you to the space that I'm going to use, right? Now, think about it. How many of us keep wanting a bigger space and keep criticizing the space that we are living in? Do you think if you're going to criticize the space you're living in, it is going to serve you, or it is going to create a platform for you to get what you need? It is not going to happen, let me tell you. When we go to visit spaces, again, using the Leica antenna, I mentioned this before, we have one frequency, and I call that frequency the happiness quotient. And what I have seen again and again is that if you don't appreciate and you're not grateful for what you have, you can never get what you want if that one frequency is off. So as soon as that frequency is off, I always tell the people who are living and working in that environment that you need to start expressing gratitude for whatever you have. You need to appreciate this house before you're going to get another house. You're going to appreciate your business, your clients, your customers, your suppliers before you can expand your business. So it becomes very important that never criticize or debunk anything that is giving you service. Always appreciate it. Okay, becomes extremely important. Yes, Rishita? Go ahead, Rishita.
Yeah. So I have this weird question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So I feel this extreme high when I'm giving gratitude and I'm practicing Ho'oponopono and everything. But then when I am in that state, all of a sudden I feel like सब कुछ boring हो रहा है. And then after some time I'll get a low, and then I'll realize कि नहीं, start the whole thing again. I'll get high, and then I'll realize कि ठीक है अब सब boring हो रहा है, and then it's repeating. The whole cycle is repeating.
Correct. So this is exactly what we were talking about before we started the book reading. So when we start doing a process, right, there is a high which generates. We go in a upward curve. And then when we come to a plateau state, we feel that nothing is happening over here. There is no growth. But sustaining ourselves in that plateau state is very, very important. Otherwise, we are going to fall, because that plateau state at the end will always give us a choice point, whether to continue the journey or to fall low, right? So the idea is to maintain that state of consciousness.
Oh.
For example, there was an experiment done where they had a frog in water, right? And their water was at a particular temperature. And very, very gently and slowly, they started increasing the temperature of the water. Now, what do you think was happening to the frog? Did he notice the shift in the temperature of the water? Rishita, you have to unmute.
I think maybe.
If the temperature rises very, very slowly, you won't even realize it, because you will get accustomed to that temperature. And ultimately, the temperature was taken to boiling point and the frog didn't even realize that it was boiling. Are you getting what I'm saying? So now over here, whenever we are going into these states start becoming mundane for us. And we are constantly looking for a kick, right? It's like a drug addict. You will find that a drug addict, pehle 1 gram leta hai, he gets a very big high, right? And then slowly what happens? There's a plateau comes, ab 1 gram se kuch nahi hota hai, ab 2 gram lena padega. And that's how the guy gets addicted. Why? Because you're looking for the kick. You're not sustaining that field, right? So when we are going into these expanded states, we need to start sustaining that field. Be all right with nothing happening for some time, but focus on the practice. Keep doing it, keep doing it. And when the opportune time comes, the next growth level will start, or another modality will come into your life where then you'll catch it. And it's like a train, right? You've got on off the platform from one train. Now nothing is happening in the platform. And then another train comes and you get onto that train. Okay. So sustain it. Don't let it drop. Rishita, this is what I would suggest to you.
So another thing that's happening is I find it difficult to be grateful at that time. Like I'm being grateful if I received this high, and then all of a sudden I have this ego ki sab kuch to maine hi kar raha hai. I mean,
So this is exactly what we've
Why
been
should I
talking
be
about.
grateful?
So this is all that we are talking about, right? When you use the process and the ego comes in, that I have done it, not divinity, that I'm connecting to a higher state of consciousness and then things are happening. So when the
Yeah.
ego comes in, your butt is bound to be banged up, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So you are allowing the ego, you are not doing anything, right? Where did the inspiration to do it come from? That's what we've been talking about in this chapter. It always
Yeah.
comes from divinity. It comes from below the line. It comes as an
Yeah.
inspiration. So when you start holding on to that everything that is happening, I'm not making it happen, then the shifts will start taking place. Then you get into allowing rather than doing.
Yeah.
Effortlessness, right? Rather than
Yes.
effortfulness. So allow that shift, hold on to that state. Don't let the ego come into the picture. You let me tell you, you're not doing anything. Believe me. If you think I am talking over here, really I'm telling you I'm not talking. Believe me when I tell you this. Simply, I'm seriously telling you because I'm not thinking and talking. वो जो आ रहा है बोल रहा है, खत्म हो गया कहानी. I don't even know. If you ask me a little while later, what did you say? I don't know what I said. If you get what I mean. You understand?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it is happening, right? You're not making it happen. So that's what Reverend Bill also said. I go into a thing and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Whatever comes, I just talk about it. So when you get into that state, then who's doing? Are you doing the talking? You're not doing it.
So
You
is
talk,
it the same? Hmm.
you talk to any of these very high composers or artists, they'll say that I saw it. It came to me. I never did it.
Yeah.
Understand? So where is
Yeah.
it coming from?
So is it the same reason a lot of times when we're talking to somebody and they feel like we did not really discuss about this particular topic, but then all of a sudden you just spoke about it. They're
Correct.
like, how do you know about and why are you talking about this particular thing?
Exactly. So that's where inspiration comes from. When you're connected, you'll start talking about the very thing that needs to be talked about.
Okay.
Okay, when you go into Focus 27, I still can't forget that scene where these people are there in the classroom, right? And they have a world in front of them. And what they are testing is if I put a stimulus in the world, what will happen? So if you see whatever is happening, there's a huge planning going behind whatever is happening. Who are the people coming into your life? What are the lessons that they need to explain to you? What are the reasons why they are coming into your life? Why did you plan to have them in your life at the end of the day? Because let me tell you, whatever is happening in the higher state of consciousness, you have actually programmed it, you have planned it. You understand? Just in this small state of consciousness, you don't have access to that. Now, what are we doing in all these processes we are doing? We are attempting to increase that state of consciousness so that we start to get to know the true self. We start to get to know the true, what we are actually. Because we've really forgotten what we are. The ego is a small guy, right? But the ego wants everything, selfish, everything for yourself. That is what we need to transcend. So when you're going through these highs, attempt to sustain it. Be in gratitude that yes, I'm hitting a high and there is nothing happening. That's beautiful, right? That means that something new is going to come into my life. But if you don't give that newness a chance, today, suppose you are learning a lesson, right? Till you learn that lesson, because every lesson builds on itself. Now, till you don't learn this lesson, can you learn the next lesson?
No.
So if you are not learning this lesson, you hit it and then drop back. Then you hit it and you drop back. Are you going to create a space for yourself to go into the next lesson? Until you learn this lesson and transcend it, right? So every time you're going, you're getting a high. Now to have hit it. Boom. Now where are you? Now again, you have to do the same thing.
Yes.
But if you can sustain that high, be in that high, and not let the ego come in, allow things to happen, then you put yourself in a position to get the next high. Are you getting it? So you're losing it. So don't lose it. Hold on to it. No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He paused before continuing. So, what happens in your soul moment to moment? Joseph, happens in all souls at the same moment. How wonderful to realize this. More wonderful, however, is appreciating that you can appeal to the divine creator to cancel these memories in your subconscious mind to zero and to replace them in your soul and the souls of all with divinity's thoughts, words, deeds, and actions. How do you reply to that? All I could think was, I love you.
So what is he saying? That moment to moment, everything is happening to us. The moment we allow divinity to clean whatever is happening to us and create space for what the divine will or our soul's purpose is, I will start operating with my soul's purpose and achieve what I have come here to achieve. So the end game is that we would like to be in that state of zero where things are happening. We are not making them happen. Okay. So we can stop here. This chapter is over.